UFC 281, Alex Pereira shocks the world and defeats the middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. What an amazing event that happened in Madison Square Garden. It seems like Madison Square Garden is just the arena that the UFC needs when they want to put on amazing fights. It looked like Pereira was losing most of the contest. Israel Adesanya was going to get a decision win, and then all of a sudden he comes out with the nuclear bomb, TKOing Israel Stylebender Adesanya. 2 minutes and 1 second left in round number 5. His coaches were calling and begging him to knock out Stylebender. And it seemed like he pulled out everything to get this win. What an amazing night of fights. The UFC put on a record for most first round finishes. UFC 281 was a major success, in my opinion. Exciting, action-packed fights. And the main event caused many people to just have their jaws drop. For this man to do what he did to Stylebender in the way that he did it and TKOing him in that 5th round was just amazing. We're live streaming this right now on our YouTube channel, so if you're listening to this later on, please go check out our live streams whenever we do them. But now I have a special guest with me, Nibs, who's watching the fights with me and was equally impressed. How did you feel about these fights? What are your thoughts on the new middleweight champion of the world and what he did to someone like Stylebender? What do you think?
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me back on. And wow, what an amazing card. I think just as like anyone else, we didn't expect this from Alex Pereira, especially against the Stylebender. Wow, and it was looking like he was maybe gonna lose this right at the end, maybe by decision. But yeah, as you said, he pulled something out, and wow, what an amazing finish by Alex Pereira. And yeah, there's so much more to talk about in this card, but wow, what a way to end it, and what a shocker. Like, I just could not believe it at the end, but great win by Alex Pereira. But I'm excited. Many are they were saying during the broadcast that there could be a rematch, and I definitely think there should be, because that was way more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, many people thought that UFC 281 would be one that Israel Adesanya might win, and obviously with the past kickboxing matches that these two gentlemen have had, we just knew that Adesanya was thinking about his last loss against Alex Pereira via knockout, and it seemed like it was a replay. Stylebender was doing his thing against Pereira, and he got him against the fence. He did a lot of wrestling. He did a lot of clinch work. The one major takedown that Adesanya got, the one takedown that he got, was due to Pereira and what he was doing in this fight, and it seemed like it was a reversal on his part. Now, we wanted to talk about a couple fights on this card. Obviously, the 3 main card fights were the important ones, and the UFC really put them in the right place. And let's just go one by one. Poirier versus Chandler, lightweight bout. Many people saying that this was the people's main event, and it was one that 100% is going to deliver. For a fighter like Michael Chandler to put himself in the fire and have that kill or be killed attitude, he really put it on Poirier in that first round. In that second and at the end of that round, it seemed like Poirier was bouncing back in that one. And then Michael Chandler in the second round took down Poirier, which was very uncommon for him, especially his attitude. But we all know D1 wrestler, a great wrestler, having that extensive background, but just not using it, and that just produced fireworks in this fight. And the way that Poirier, I think what one of the commentators mentioned, and I believe it was DC, he was mentioning the fact that Jorge Masvidal, Dustin Poirier's teammate, longtime training partner, mentioned that if there are bullets flying, the one person that he needs is Dustin Poirier in his corner. A fighter, if you will, that always keeps his cool, is always ready for battle, to do what needs to be done. And those shots that Michael Chandler was landing on Poirier in that first round was, it would have put many men out. But Dustin Poirier showing that championship grit and really battling the storm and getting this win against Chandler. What a special fight. What a crazy fight. I mean, both fighters notched something on their belt as being some of the most exciting fighters ever. I remember when Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje fought each other. They were fighting for the most exciting, most baddest man on the planet belt. And I didn't think many fights could top that one. But this fight had it all. Nibs, what do you think about this fight? And what do you think, Dustin Poirier did that was so special in this fight? Again, what do you think about that first round flurries that Dustin Poirier took in this fight?
Wow. I think Dustin Poirier, he's just a different fighter than Chandler. Like, honestly, I was very impressed at the beginning with Chandler. Like, look at how bloodied he was at the end of that fight. He really went through it, and oh my God, I just could not believe what I was seeing, like all the blood coming out of his nose at the end. But Poirier, oh my God, he just kept on like throwing punches after punches. Like, that was just a bunch of punches like from each fighter. But like, we could see from Poirier that he was really able to keep up with it, unlike Chandler, where you could see that at the end of it, he really couldn't handle more of it. But wow, just like good on both of these fighters. It was like a very impressive fight, and it definitely lived up as fight of the night for me. But yeah, like, amazing win by Poirier, and I'm excited to see more of him in the future.
Yeah, number one contender. It seems like, after the fight announcement with Islam Makhachev, his fight in Australia, Poirier is right there. 33 years old. A lot of people were talking about how there's a lot of mileage on Dustin Poirier, but again, 33 years old. He's pretty young for this game. He's old on miles, but his age is still there. Last thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to this fight, the fish hooking that was going on in that second round where I was mentioning the wrestling. Michael Chandler was trying to pull the head of Dustin Poirier up to get that rear naked choke in. I mean, that's something that I saw right away while I was watching the fight. Nibs can attest to this. While we were watching this, I mentioned that it looked like Michael Chandler was trying to pull the head up of Dustin Poirier. This is something that he complained about multiple times in the fight, during the fight, and after the fight. But he still faced that adversary and won this fight. And the way that he won it was spectacular. Submission win for him in the third round, in the last round, and some people could have had it 2-1 Chandler, could have had it 1-1 Chandler, but in that third round, Dustin Poirier showed that championship medal. He got the interim belt at one point, but I still think the Hall of Fame career of Dustin Poirier really showed in this. Okay, so next one that I wanted to talk about was Zhang Weili submitting Carla Esparza in the second round. Um, a lot of people were going into this fight thinking that Weili was going to run right over Esparza. And I think in the first round, you could see that it was either Weili was just trying to get a holding on and trying to figure out what Carla was planning on doing. She was doing pretty good with the wrestling, I think. But when it came to the striking, Zhang Weili was really putting it on Carla Esparza. I mean, even in the jiu-jitsu on the ground, obviously, but, even with Weili's jiu-jitsu, you could see that she was a couple beats faster than Esparza. Whatever Esparza was doing, Weili was like a couple steps just like in front of her. And I think that's what really won her this fight. It was that determination. It was that it was she knew that she wanted that belt, and obviously she felt that that belt was her for the taking. Again, another thing that I wanted to mention, and I mentioned this before when I've talked about Zhang Weili, is the fact that when she does get booed, when she, when the crowd is against her and, her opponent is talking a lot of trash, it seems like it gets to her head. Might be a language barrier, might be something like that, but Zhang Weili is your UFC strawweight champion of the world. Getting this win is a big deal for her, and she's just back on the horse now and back to being the boogie woman of this division. I mean, the all-rounded fight that I saw in this, I don't know if I'm excited to see all the fights for Zhang Weili, but this was, she ran Carla Esparza over, especially, the back half of the first round and the second round. You could just see it. I mean, Nibs, what do you think about this fight? I mean, I think it was a total, trucking by Weili, and it looked like she was just meant to have this belt around her waist. What do you think?
Yeah, I think with Zhang Weili, we all kind of expected this outcome. She's just that kind of a fighter, and just looking at the stats afterwards, the amount of total strikes and significant strikes thrown, she was outnumbering Esparza by so much. You could really see that by the end of the fight, she was really overpowering Esparza. And you could definitely see that in the submission at the end. It looked almost too easy for her. But yeah, like I'm very impressed by her, and I'm definitely excited to see more of her in the future. I think this fight definitely delivered on what was expected upon. We all thought that she was gonna get the belt next, and there we go.
Yeah, just to talk about some of those numbers, I have them right here. So Carla Esparza, let's just talk about her total strikes. She got 19 strikes in total, and we're talking about all the rounds, right? This is not just one round. Zhang Weili total strikes was 42, significant strikes 37, and then Carla Esparza with only 6 significant strikes. One takedown by Carla Esparza. That's the wrestling that I was kind of talking about, and one of the things that was working for Carla Esparza, one of the only things that was working for her, what Zhang Weili did in this fight, it was something special. What Carla Esparza did in this fight, and I think it really shows with the opponent. In her last fight against Rose Namajunas, one of the slowest and, let's just say it outright, one of the most boring fights in UFC history. It was just due to the fact that both opponents were not willing to attempt anything. And so you put her against someone like Zhang Weili, who's always putting that offense against Carla Esparza, pushing her against the cage and doing what needs to be done to get a win. I mean, Zhang Weili is going to be, like big trouble for any woman in the strawweight division. Okay, we talked about it a little bit at the starting of this live stream, but let's talk about Pereira. I mean, to be honest with you, I was already making the graphics for this podcast, and it was saying Israel Adesanya has won. And then Pereira just comes in and knocks out Israel Adesanya, who is regarded as, the second best middleweight of all time. I don't know, but, in the history books now. And for Alex Pereira to do what he did and to knock and TKO Israel Adesanya, it was something special. I mean, let's just talk about this fight. I mean, at the end of the day, when it came to this one, it seemed like Adesanya was winning the whole fight, but you could tell with every shot that Alex Pereira hit Israel Adesanya with, it was bothering him a lot more than Adesanya's shots were bothering Pereira. I mean, with every shot, you could hear the thud, you could hear the cracks, and Adesanya did not like it one bit. And he was obviously trying to avoid every single shot, but the shots that were hitting were really messing with Israel Adesanya. And let's give credit to Israel Adesanya. A couple of shots against the cage, really wobbled Alex Pereira. First round, wobbled Pereira. I mean, against the cage, he was really bothering Pereira with the grappling that he was doing and all that kind of stuff. But it just seemed like the shots that Israel was hitting were not the same as what Pereira was dishing back out. Nibs, what do you think about our new middleweight champion of the world? And what do you think about those shots that I just mentioned?
Yeah, I think the shots by Pereira they were definitely hitting like a truck. Like, you could see how much it was affecting Israel Adesanya. You could see how menacing he was when he would push him against the cage and just throw shots at him, and Israel trying to defend by grabbing his wrists and trying to stop him. But we saw at the end of the fight that Israel just couldn't stop him at that point. He was really able to unload, even though he was technically losing, but he just looked like he was free at that point, and he hit him with a couple at the beginning, and then it was just like all over after that. As you said, I'd give Stylebender like a lot of credit during this fight. He doesn't have as hard of a shot as Pereira, but you could definitely see him like dancing around and hitting some significant shots against Pereira too. But wow, Pereira just looks very menacing, and I don't know who the next person to fight him is, but I would like to see a rematch. But whoever it is, wow, I did not expect to see him fight like this. This is like an amazing outcome, and I think we're about to see the start of an amazing UFC career from Alex Pereira.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be an immediate rematch, and then if Israel Adesanya is not ready for that rematch, like you mentioned, Nibs, I think what happens in that case, I mean, you got a whole lot of wrestlers in this division. And I mean, Adesanya did pave the way for Alex Pereira, but we have a lot of wrestlers that might be able to give some problems for Pereira. But what we saw in this fight, and with the fights that Alex Pereira has had before, the devastating knockouts that this man can produce are insane. And I think me and you were talking about this, Nibs, while watching the fight. It was just every single shot was significant. I mean, I'm not talking about statistics. I'm talking about even the jab that was landing on Israel Adesanya was just pushing him back, and it was just hurting Adesanya every single time. One thing I did want to mention when it came to this fight is the body language of Alex Pereira when he went back to his corner. Every fighter is different, But you could see the way that Glover and the rest of the Danbury, Connecticut team were talking to Alex Pereira. The way that they were talking to him, it was just like they begged him to knock out Israel Adesanya. I couldn't understand most of the translation. I was obviously listening to the broadcast, but it just seemed like Alex Pereira was just complaining about a bunch of stuff. He was worried, but then he just put this mask on when the bell rang, and just, especially in that fifth round, I think DC made a really good point when mentioning that it was the fifth round, it was the last round, and he could empty the gas tank on Israel Adesanya. I think that's what really, being able to just say, hey, this is my last shot. I got to knock this guy out. That's what really won him this fight. I mean, it was just so, you don't see Israel Adesanya losing these fights. I mean, he's literally styled on people, just like his nickname goes. Styled on people and made them look like average humans. And what Alex Pereira did, I mean, me and Nibs were talking about this, is like, you know, Ariel Helwani, a bunch of these guys talk about it, but just to reiterate it, it's like, you know, hitting a 20-point shot in basketball and winning the game. This guy, Alex Pereira, on all of the judges' scorecards, was losing this fight. And for him to come back in the last round and TKO the middleweight champion of the world is just something special. Any final thoughts on this, Nibs?
Yeah. I mean, I'm like a huge Israel Adesanya fan, just as a lot of people are. And yeah, as you said, it was insane seeing him lose like this. But one thing that I hope for his next fight is that he doesn't think too much about this, because obviously they've had history in the past with kickboxing and, you know, him getting knocked out and stuff. So this was a pretty important fight for him. And it might get in his head, but hopefully he can use that for his next fight, because I think he is such an amazing fighter. And in this case, it was just that he just got like overpowered by Pereira. Yeah, as you said, wow, just like at the last couple of minutes, he really just went into another gear and just went off on Israel. Yeah, it didn't look like he had too much momentum, but as we saw earlier in the fight, with every one of those punches that he landed, like you said, it was damaging him, and he got those couple at the end that really disorientated him, and yeah, he couldn't really do anything at that point. But yeah, I hope the best for both these fighters, and yeah, I hope Israel comes back strong, because I know he's just an amazing fighter.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on one of the points that you made. Just talking about Pereira, I mean, again, you know, we mentioned it. It's just like it felt like Israel Adesanya was uncomfortable in some of these situations. I mean, the thing that I want to know is to see Israel Adesanya so disappointed after this fight. It just, I mean, he must have been just remembering the time that he got knocked out in kickboxing. I mean, this fight eerily played out like that kickboxing match where Israel Adesanya was winning, you know, most of the rounds, and for him to get viciously KO'd. I mean, the kickboxing one was a flatline KO in the middle of the ring, but this one, obviously, it was just you know, against the cage, those shots that were ringing off. It was so weird to watch, because it seemed like a typical Adesanya win where he was just gonna, you know, cruise to victory. But this is Madison Square Garden, and what we've learned from some of these fights in Madison Square Garden is that they just hit different. They just do. They literally are different fights. A couple of other fights that I want to talk about that weren't in the 3 top main event fights. I mean, let's just start from the prelims. I mean, Meatball Molly McCann was, going against Blanchfield. She lost, and it was very interesting. I mentioned it a couple times while we were watching this fight, that it was just so interesting that Molly McCann, who is going on such a big run in the UFC, goes against someone like Blanchfield, and it was a tough test, and it kind of derails some of the great stuff that Meatball Molly McCann was doing. Another very interesting one is Superman Span winning against Dominic Reyes. That was a brutal knockout in that fight. Flatlined Dominic Reyes, and it was tough to watch. Moicano getting the great win. I mean, who doesn't like a Moicano win? I mean, but it, again, derails some of the New Zealand hype. Let's talk about Dan Hooker. I mean, Dan Hooker spinning back the clock. What a weird fight he had. His opponent was trying to go for his legs every single time and doing all these rolls and all this kind of stuff, and it was just different levels. And I mean, this is the type of stuff that we need more in MMA, is these bounce back fights where UFC fighters take on lower competition and just, get a win under their belt. And this is perfect for Dan Hooker. The broadcast mentioned that Dan Hooker was the savior of the COVID times and taking every single fight. Now, a tough one for me to watch was the Frankie Edgar loss against Chris. I mean, the guy's family was sitting front row, and all his 3 little kids and his wife were watching him, and he got kneed and flatlined in that octagon. I mean, that was a tough. This is the toughest sport in the world at the end of the day, and this is what happens. Your fighters take on your veterans take on these rising stars, and they do what they did in this fight. Nibs, is there any fight that you wanted to highlight in the main or prelims? There were some also. I want to mention there was some good early prelim action on this card as well. Nibs, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the Frankie Edgar fight. What an amazing career for him, and I know that no one wanted to see it end like this. Sadly, a lot of the times it does end like this, but he just got laid out. And as you said, even before the fight started, we both saw his family sitting in the crowd, and very sad to see him end his career in front of his family like that. But I'm sure they're very proud of him. Decade-long career, and I wanted to see an upset with this fight, just like a lot of people did. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. As you said with the Dan Hooker fight, that was it was entertaining in a very odd way, I would say. You don't really see fights like this. Like with Claudio, you really saw him act kind of like a spider, going for the legs at any point possible. Really attacking from the ground at all points. But you saw Dan Hooker have nothing with that. Like, he was, he did not care for that. You can see how much of a stronger fighter he is. Like, really almost like a perfect fight for Dan Hooker. And pretty entertaining. Always been a fan of him, so definitely ready to see more of him and see him bounce back, as you said. Just overall amazing card, and I definitely had an amazing time. Madison Square Garden never ceases to impress, always amazing fights, and amazing time.
Yeah, I mean, like I think Madison Square Garden it just pulls the best out of fighters. Knowing that rich history and what happened tonight was something special. I mean, for Pereira to do what he did and to get that win in that last round was amazing. I mean, all of these fights were just fun to watch. What just blew through, and so many first round knockouts. I mean, it was just special to watch. The Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier fight. What heart from both of these fighters. And fortunately, we saw a little bit of resolution in this fight. And we saw Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler kind of shake hands and be a little bit more cordial with each other, which was nice to see after all that they have been through. UFC 281, what a fun night of fights. I mean, Nibs, any final thoughts on this fight card?
Well, man, I don't know. I'm ready for the next UFC event, but wow, like I don't know if it can live up to this. This is like one of the best cards that I've seen in a while. Yeah, just like every fight, really entertaining. It like every fight. I never went on my phone. Nothing. I was just there, glued to the screen, and it doesn't always go that way. But yeah, MSG, as I said, just amazing. And you said, yeah, brings out another level out of these fighters. And yeah, like it was amazing watching it with you. And I'm glad I did, because the reactions that we had at some points were amazing, especially in the main event with Alex Pereira. And as you said, with Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. Wow, like what a bloody fight. And the amount of power punches that we saw, just devastating punches, and these guys just trucking through it like amazing fighters. And yeah, that's probably my fight of the night. I don't know about you, but what was your fight of the night?
I mean, I think my fight of the night has got to be Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. Bloody affair, both fighters. It was just crazy when you watch Michael Chandler fight and when he dumps people on their head the way that he does, and to still have the conditioning to take some of these shots. He got submitted, right? It wasn't like he yielded to shots or anything like that. It was the guy was using so much cardio in this fight and kept on coming forward. I mean, this is Dustin Poirier's win. This is one that, he's going to really love to have under his belt. It's one that's going to cement his position as the number one guy in the 155-pound division. And I think a lot of people were just like writing both of these guys off and saying that the young fighters are going to take over. But I think Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler showed that these old dogs have some life in them still. And again, Dustin Poirier, 33 years old. I mean, not that old. He might be old because we've known him for such a long time and he's been fighting for a long time, but legitimately 33 years old and, the superstar that he is. And, one thing that I did want to mention is the win that Pereira got against Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya, if you look at him, except for Conor McGregor, is probably the number one most popular fighter in the UFC. And, getting all these contracts, signing deals with Puma, doing those betting deals and all that kind of stuff, and, hanging out with Drake and all that is so tough. It's so tough to watch. A guy that's rising in his career the way that Israel Adesanya is, and to lose to the same guy that Alex Pereira, if you look at his Instagram or if you look at any of his social media, Whenever Israel Adesanya won a fight, Alex Pereira was there to post a video of him knocking out Israel Adesanya. This guy's followed Adesanya's career this whole time, and he's really, been the ghost on Israel Adesanya's career. And the way that he was leaning against the cage and bowing to the crowd, what a showman, but what a tough way to lose. I mean, it's just, I don't want to say, it's just weird to see, you know what I mean? Like, we cracked the yawn loss to size and to him not, like adjusting to 205. But this one is just clear cut TKO finish from Alex Pereira. I know I asked you for your last thoughts, Nibs, but any other thoughts that you had about this card?
Yeah, with Alex Pereira, as you mentioned, I think really during this fight and the lead up to this fight, he really played sort of villain arc, because Israel is definitely, as you said, one of the most popular fighters. And yeah, I think like me personally, when I saw him enter the ring, I was definitely a little spooked by him, because I could see how much of an effect he would have on Israel in terms of his past with him. And yeah, as you said, he's definitely the ghost who's haunting him. But I hope that Israel can get back to the form that he's usually at. And we did definitely see glimpses of that. Like he wasn't bad at all. Like as we said, he was winning at the end of this, and it was definitely just a comeback win for Alex Pereira. But I hope one day that Israel can, kill his demons in terms of Alex Pereira, and maybe one day he'll come back to win it and claim back the belt.
Yeah, and we'll see if he's able to face those demons in Alex Pereira. It's just so crazy. It seems like one guy just has his number. In Alex Pereira, literally followed him from kickboxing. 4 fights in the UFC, or 5 fights in the UFC. And for him to knock out the champion the way that he did was super special. So I really appreciate everybody listening to this podcast. It was really fun to talk about it live. If you missed the live stream, no worries. You can listen to it, anywhere you get your podcasts. But what a fun night of fights. UFC 281 in Madison Square Garden. Alex Pereira retains the belt. So please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and all that good stuff below. Leave a comment below. Let's talk about this. What was your reaction when Alex Pereira won the belt? Go ahead, give us 5 stars if you can on the different podcast platforms. It really helps a lot. But thank you so much. For me and Nibs, this has been the Body Punch Podcast. My name is Nat.